Hey everybody, Adam Savage, and I'm back in one of my favorite places in the world, in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And today we are talking to the Objects Conservation Department. Fred here. You're gonna tell me about this incredible dynamic mount. But first of all, tell me what this beautiful thing is.
Well, this is, both of these objects are from the Arms and Armor Department here at the Metropolitan Museum. The powder horn is a little bit older. It's, I think, late 1780s, and the shoulder belt is a 1820 roughly. So there's kind of a merging of these two objects to make it look.
Oh, they weren't used together.
No, they weren't. But we've simulated
Yeah.
the juxtaposition of both of them kind of suggests how it would look. It would be worn over the shoulder and hanging on the side. If you look closely at the engraving, you'll see the Hudson River, Lake Champlain, the Mohawk River. So it's almost like a little bit of history if you look at it closely. And you can look at this probably for an hour and still see more and more.
As we've been setting up camera, I've been looking at these engravings. This is scrimshaw. This is engraved onto bone.
Yes, this is cow horn actually.
Cow horn, okay. And the intricacy of the drawing is really incredible. And then it's got this insanely beautiful strap.
And then behind it we have this shoulder belt, which is a little bit later, 1820s.
Oh, so they weren't necessarily used together.
Exactly.
I see, okay.
And one belongs to the medieval department, the horn, and the other one belongs to the American wing. We tried to show what the relationship between the belt and the horn would be by putting them side by side.
This display of the floating belt is so beautiful. Is this a unique excursion in mounting hardware?
It is indeed, because the curator, Patricia Norby, and myself talked at length about how she would like the belt to be displayed.
Right.
She wanted something that would move, something that was exciting, dynamic.
And you have this long, flat object with two sides. It's very hard to display.
Well, we didn't want it to just lay on the deck.
Yeah.
You know, we wanted something that kind of was exciting and let your eye move across the surface. And so we worked up many different versions on, we would lay the belt over sandbags, for example, until we got the right shape and she was happy with it. And then came the hard part.
Of actually executing.
Executing them out so it would hold the belt exactly the way she wanted.
Well, I'm curious about that iterative process. Did you make like paper cutouts of the pieces and work with them in situ?
It always starts with a sketch.
Yeah.
You know, you go through some ideas, and I always thought in mount making the hardest part was the selection of the material, because it has to be strong enough to hold the object without having any movement, because you don't really want a visitor to be looking at something and it's wobbling or twanging or anything like that from a vibration from the floor or anything. So I could show you some of these samples if you want. And we have a large selection of samples in our shop, which you'll probably see a little bit later, but I could have went with a round rod like this, but I wanted a little bit more of a surface connection between the belt and the mount.
And was that to help the mount disappear and keep attention on the belt?
This, well, it would just give the belt a little bit more surface to lay on.
Right.
So this is kind of a round shape. The belt would only be touching on the very outside radius of the rod. Something more like this is probably more appropriate, because the belt can lay on top of it. This gives it a little more support, this flat strap.
I'm realizing something that I hadn't copped to before, but that I was thinking of this display as an aesthetic problem, and an engineering problem, but it's also a conservation problem. The mount is part of your conservation, isn't it?
Yes, and also the materials that we use have to be conservation approved.
Oh, right.
That's another big aspect of the materials that we use.
In terms of how they tarnish and what they might do to the objects they're touching.
So we use primarily brass in our mounts, because you know, we can heat it and bend it, we can solder it, so it has a lot of you know, aspects that are beneficial to us when we're making mounts.
And then, is this the sort of, wow, just beautiful.
Oh, well, this is, I made a little sample of the mount that I made here in the case, so we could see it. And that's That mount right there is actually made out of this strap right here. This is a thicker strap.
Is it still brass?
It's still brass, but I heated it red hot, which is called annealing, which enables you to bend it quite easily.
Oh, wow.
So if I want to make a shape,
Yeah.
and I can do this probably several times before it gets work hardened, I can bend this shape, I can twist it, I can, pretty much have command of the brass itself and how I want it to look. And
Now, I'm curious, when you're bending, this is amazing how ductile it gets.
Yeah,
Wow,
try to
oh my
bend it.
goodness, that's crazy.
it's like a wet noodle.
Oh, I'm annealing all my brass from now on. Okay, so my question to you is, do you then try and work harden it before display, or is the annealed brass strong enough considered?
I think by the time you get done bending it several times, it already starts to work harden.
Okay.
I'm not going over it with a rawhide mallet, for
Right,
example.
right.
I mean, once you bend this 3 or 4 times, it's going to get work hardened. And it's going to get a lot stiffer.
And it looks to me like you've got a sandblast finish on here.
Exactly. So once we have the shape, we can clean up the surface with a sandblaster and make it ready for paint.
Okay.
And then we also put like a felt on top, so an interface between the object and the mount to protect the object a little bit.
And with each of these materials, you guys are relying on industry tests and maybe even doing your own tests in terms of how they affect their objects?
We have a scientific research department that does testing called an ODDI test of all the materials that we use, just to make sure that they're safe to use for the art. As far as off-gassing and
I have
things of
this
that
other meta question here, which is, in order to make this mount work for this belt, there has to be a sort of regular meeting of the two. Am I right about this? And how do you make such a dynamic mount for something so delicate and precious? How do you handle the object itself?
Oh, well, there's a lot of fitting involved. I always thought that, the mount makers probably handle the art more than anyone else in the museum, because it's a constant fitting, bending, try it, see, does it work? No, let's bend it a little more here or there.
Yeah.
So it's a constant process of fitting it, taking in this case, the belt off the mount,
Right.
doing some more bends, putting it back on. So you have to be really delicate when you're reattaching the art every single time.
I can imagine.
And the other thing is we're usually under a deadline, a time frame.
Oh, no.
So I think this was made in maybe 2 days. It had to be finished and installed in the gallery.
Oh my goodness.
So it can be a pressure cooker
I
sometimes.
certainly imagine. I'm curious if in handling the objects, the mount makers, you guys ever discover things about the objects that weren't known before?
I suppose so, but we're concentrating so much on what we're doing
Right.
that, and I have to confess, there's times when I don't even look at the art that closely. I'm so busy making the mount for it and not fitting it properly.
Yeah.
And then the mount is finished, the art goes out, and I say, I never actually even looked at that piece. So I must confess that's what happens
Fascinating.
to I think all of us. We're so concentrated in what we're doing. And here, the last step, by the way, of this process is to camouflage what we make so no one sees it.
This was the thing I wanted to talk about, because the mount really, really disappears given So talk to me about how you decide to do that camouflage, because it's very specific
Well,
here.
first of all, generally speaking, the mount is painted the general color, like this is black, for
Right,
example.
right.
And then once that's done, the belt, in this case, can be positioned on the mount, and then you're slowly trying to mimic what the strap is hiding.
Oh my goodness.
And this is sort of a hexagonal shape to represent the 6 Native American tribes. So it was a matter of just getting those rectangles right, and they're all different. They're not just little perfect rectangles,
Right.
they're regular rectangles. And also the viewpoint, the
right.
angle
The
that you're
person
looking
seeing
at
it like this,
has
not
a lot to do with
necessarily-
it. I mean, you don't want to do it on a table flat,
Right.
do all the inpainting, and then it gets up and the viewpoint is different and it changes. So it's good to do it kind of when the mount is finished. And
I
almost-
didn't realize how much theater there was involved. I mean, and that's a beautiful thing. Did you make both parts of this mount for the horn and the belt?
No, Ted Hunter made the mount for
we
the
know
horn.
Ted.
Yeah, you know. And it's funny, they do all their mounts in steel. So that's a very delicate steel mount, which enables them to have very delicate, strong mounts.
I see. So
We don't really use steel. We use brass in our shop mostly because it's a little bit more user-friendly for us in our shop because we make a lot of bends, a lot of tight bends. It's a little softer. So that's slight difference between the shops.
And I notice over here you actually included the little lines of some brown lines that carry down as well, even.
Yes. Well, I tried to do that. That was difficult. But I mean, that was like right in the viewers,
I think it's
right in
perfect.
front. So I tried to simulate some of those threads a little bit.
So has the dynamism of this beautiful mount increased your workload? Are you being asked to do more and more floaty and
This
dynamic
is an
mounts?
unusual piece. A lot of the pieces we work on are three-dimensional and they're not flexible at all.
Right.
So this was something that we had a little bit more opportunity to be creative, and this is sort of a very flexible object. So there were many variations that were possible with this.
It's the floatiness of it. The aesthetics are so beautiful. You must be very proud. You must be a proud dad.
I'm very happy with it.
And I also noticed that, because they are separate objects, they are not actually touching.
Right. We just tried to make it look like they were attached, but not really. And then one other thing that happens with the belt is that on this side, you're seeing this surface,
Right.
but then when you get up there, it twists, and this top becomes the bottom.
Oh, right.
So I had to figure out how am I going to make the mount to allow for that, and I had to cut that strap in two parts and have this little loop coming down.
Now, is there competition between museums? Does the Met crow to other museums that you guys have done something
There's
dynamic?
many. I mean, the Getty is incredible.
Really?
They're using very advanced techniques.
Oh, lovely.
And the British Museum, for example, their technique is to paint all their mounts black so the viewer can see the difference between the art and the mount. Make
So
it
it's a
very
totally
obvious.
philosophically different
Exactly,
approach.
exactly. Here at the Met, we camouflage our mounts, so that, yes, there's a difference in philosophy there.
That's fascinating.
Neither one is correct or wrong, but I mean, I don't mind if that mount was black. I
Yeah.
can understand the reasoning behind that. We like the camouflage thing, so that's kind of the icing on the cake when we're at the end of the mount. Then we get a couple hours to play with the colors, and it's kind of the magic in mount making for us.
That's got to be really fun.
It's fun. It's a lot of
I
fun.
noticed even the brown on the edges of the hooks
Yeah.
to match the outside edge of the belt.
Oh, yes.
Incredible.
I mean, the ultimate compliment for us is when somebody says, "What do you do?" I don't see anything. And we say, thank you very much.
It is a little like a magic trick.
It is like a magic trick, yes.
Amazing. Thank you so much. This has been such an education.